Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the HR Conference 2020. This last session, I'm super excited about. It's developing talent, how to leverage community partners to fill your talent pipeline. And it's moderated by David Kornecki of DTC LLC. He does a lot of work with us. He also has been trying to help solve the printing industry's workforce shortage issue for about 2 to 3 years now with us. And he has experience working in both Minnesota and Illinois legislature, crafting education, higher education, and workforce development budgets, policies, and programming as a committee administrator for higher education and workforce development in the Minnesota Senate. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Dave Kornecki for our last session of the day.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Steve, for having me. It's great working with you, and I'm excited about the panel discussion we have today. We have some real experts in the field that will be either a great community partner or someone that can help you understand how to build those community partnerships. So with that, I'll introduce the folks I'm joined here by. Let's go with Jim. Jim, he's the director of Vivo's Institute of Career and Technical Education. He grew up in San Diego, California, where he received a BA and MA in Communication Studies from San Diego State University. And he now went on to get a PhD in Communication Studies from the U of M. So over the last 30 years, Jim has been an adjunct faculty at various colleges and universities in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and worked in correctional education administration at 5 state prisons. So in December 2018, Jim started his current position at Vivo as the director of the Institute of Career and Technical Education. So Jim, welcome, thank you. And more or less just kind of a quick little introduction, put out a quick question to all the panelists to start, just kind of key to successful partnerships, like between a public and a private entity. What, just if you could in a sentence or two, just surmise what a key partnership looks like to you.
Sure. I think a key partnership is extremely wide net, and it really tends to involve people at every level. So some successful partnerships I've been involved in weren't just folks at high levels of the organization. There were folks on the ground who could inform the work. And that was really a key part of it.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. Next, joined here by Tim Barrett. Tim is the trade and industry specialist for the Minnesota Department of Education, otherwise known as MDE. He and his colleagues support teachers across the state of Minnesota who provide career technical education programs for middle and high school students. CTE provides opportunities to explore high demand career options and gives students the technology and skills needed for success in adult life. So prior to joining MDE, Tim acquired a great deal of workforce development experience during 6 years as the director of STEM education and workforce development with the Minnesota Technology Association, formerly known as MTHA, which was Minnesota High Tech Association. And over his career, he has organized and delivered professional development ranging from classroom engagement and STEM integration to use of data and technology. So Tim, thank you for joining us. Kind of same question I posed to Jim. What's a key kind of partnership deal making for you? Like, what do you see are the key ingredients for partnerships between public and private entities?
Thanks, Dave, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Glad you could be here. I would build a little bit on what Jim was just saying about relationships, and that it's not just certain members of any organization. Really successful partnerships really involve institutional relationships. So it's not just a one-to-one, because obviously if you have that one-to-one only, there's a very good possibility that if somebody leaves, that whole partnership falls apart. So really having kind of multiple touch points between the two organizations really help to keep those partnerships, but also to help build on what you might have started with, beginning with a one-on-one relationship, building trust in that whole organization.
That's a great distinction there, having that institutional relationship. So passing the baton, not just one player, not just one-on-one. So thank you, Tim. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Next, we'll go to Jessa Dames. Jessa Dames is the Executive Director of Skillsusa Minnesota. She holds a master's degree in Career and Technical Education Administration from UW Stout and a bachelor's degree in English Education from UW Eau Claire. Her previous roles include teaching English in both middle and high school and in college admissions. Jessa has a passion for helping individuals of any age to find their direction and advocates career exploration throughout middle and high school in order to help young people identify their pathway to a career. So Jessa, thank you for joining us. And same question to you. What have you seen in your time out in the field as key to good relationship building?
Sure, I would use the word symbiotic. I feel that as long as the partnership is benefiting all parties, they'll feel that it's very successful. So that would be my short answer.
Great. No, thank you. And for everyone who's listening, we'll expound on these throughout the day, but this is just a little kickstart. So last is Debbie. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for literally bringing a ray of sunshine to the panel discussion here with your backdrop. And Debbie has been a career and technical education director with Bloomington Public Schools for 20 years. In addition, she serves as a program coordinator for the Volunteer Connection and has taught middle school and high school. She has also been a Carl D. Perkins Federal Grant Coordinator for 18 years. She currently serves 15 Southwest Metro area school districts with Normandale Community College as the post-secondary grant partner for the Twin Cities region. The objectives, strategies, and initiatives of the federal grant are facilitated by Min-State and Minnesota Department of Education through a Perkins State Plan. So many talents that Debbie brings to this work. Thoughts on partnerships, kind of key ingredients to a successful, viable relationship.
Hello, and thank you for having me here today. I'd say everything that has been mentioned is critical to partnerships. And I will add that we also need to look at a shared base of information and open communication so that our expectations are clear when we go into a relationship to develop partnerships.
That's great. So clear expectations on roles and what people will be able to deliver. That's great. So thank you for joining us here. If anything, I've got the president here too of PIM, who many of the panel attendees I'm sure know, but Steve Bonoff, thank you for joining us. Let's see if we can unmute you.
Yeah, now I'm unmuted. Thanks, Dave.
There you go. All right, great. Steve, thank you for joining us. So Steve, wanted to chat with you about the environment that current print industry finds itself in. Obviously, talent has always, for years now, been a focus, but things changed significantly about 6 months ago. So it didn't diminish by any means the need for talent, but what are you hearing from your employers in regards to what they're seeing, what their needs are, and where things are at as a whole as an industry?
You know, so there isn't obviously no one trend, right? Because for very many reasons, companies are at a variety of levels. We have a few companies that have actually exceeded their year over year just based upon their market segment that they're serving. I mean, packaging continues to be one of the strongest segments of our industry, and that has maintained it throughout the pandemic. But sales, you know, the data that you're seeing here on this screen, this is just through July. There has been for a number of companies a pickup in August, and that has continued, I think, into September. So while we are seeing some moderate optimism in the future, you know, obviously we all know that as we get into colder temperatures, the less people are going to be comfortable staying inside for long periods of time, or outside, I should say, that it's going to perhaps be a volatile fall. Probably one of the most significant elements over this last few months, though, was that the payroll protection loan program that was implemented extensively throughout the industry and made just an enormous difference. So it has been, of course, quite frustrating to watch from the sidelines, although we've been advocating nationally for another round of investment into our companies and our companies' ability to maintain their employment levels. So far, that second round, obviously, we haven't been able to pull across the finish line.
Right.
In Minnesota, PIM did a strong job of advocating for members to the point of where, sometimes print is not seen as the essential industry that it is. And that's our job to make sure that that's more well known. In Minnesota, Governor Walz had initially had print as a non-essential industry, and all were going to be required to close on March 27th. We spent a very tough, long couple days prior to that and did get them to amend that and added print as essential if you were serving essential supply chains. And honest to God, that is just about every one of our printers are serving some level of essential supply chain. And it would have been devastating for them not to continue. So, that's, the companies like that are still serving essential supply chains. They're, of course, pivoting to a variety of different products. There's been a lot of shifting to PPE, a lot of shifting to more essential food-based suppliers, pharmacy, medical, as much as they can. But then it's also just maintaining the communications. Everybody is on a wait-and-see attitude, whether you're a service provider or a customer, slowly feeling out their clients and their needs. And so I'm not saying it's not tough for a lot of companies. It really is. Once the PPP ran out, we did see another uptick in layoffs. On the other hand, we just got notification today of a big hiring going on at one of our members' companies. So hiring is still an issue. Finding entry-level employees, and we'll talk a little bit about Print is Everywhere, our student recruitment campaign. Hiring is still an issue in manufacturing where we need to drum up more interest and understanding of the opportunities that our industry and other manufacturing industries have from a career perspective. And so that's our job, number one, over the next year or two, and hopefully we're up to the challenge.
Right. Well, it sounds like, too, given business cycles, there's always going to be ups and downs. But it sounds like workforce development, though, consistently will always, whether it's up or down cycle, need to be something thought about from a talent pipeline kind of pools. Is that?
Yeah. The talent pipeline, the infrastructure of generating talent, whether the cycle is up or down, is critical that we continue to get that pipeline established and more effective.
Yeah, great. So thank you, Steve. Appreciate the update on the industry. Jim, want to kind of touch on the program you and Steve actually work together on pretty closely. For those who aren't aware, Jim with Avivo has also brought in Goodwill Easter Seals and have partnered with PIM to try to develop, not necessarily try to develop, but they did develop a training pathway for workers. So if anything, I thought, Jim and Steve, kind of as a transition here, might be good to talk about how that partnership came about, how to build that partnership, to just kind of show the example that Tim was saying earlier. It takes a long time for these things to develop. There's multiple people involved, and it really just, so I'd love to hear your perspective, Jim, on how that came to be.
Sure, thanks, Dave. So when I joined Avivo in December of 2018, we were just at the beginning stages of this project and this partnership and collaboration with Goodwill Easter Seals and PIM. And early on, we had some meetings. And Dave, I know you were at one of those meetings. And really, it was driven by the process of the City of Minneapolis's Community Pathways grant. So that was the funding source that we were looking at. And so the partnership really is between Avivo, Goodwill Easter Seals, PIM and the city of Minneapolis, because that's who's funding the project. And so we had some planning meetings, and Stephen and Chris with PIM, I thought, did a fantastic job of bringing in employers early on to get folks to understand what we were trying to do. You know, without major pipelines in our higher education system, what else could be done to put together a project and a program where we could recruit and train and place folks into print industry jobs. So that's kind of how it got started. Steve, do you want to add anything from your experience?
Yeah, I think probably one of the things that we hear the most is that people don't understand the opportunities of print and the print industry, and then our employers said that they weren't having enough people come to the door that knew anything about print. And we know that there's second chance classes out there who really want a career. And so I think this was a perfect opportunity because we were developing an apprentice program, and we still are developing an apprentice program. But that's a multi-month, obviously year-long program, and it's not just necessarily designed to recruit someone brand new into the industry. It's a little more daunting. So this is a perfect opportunity to create something to just prove people's ability to work and capabilities and understanding of the industry. And it allowed us to get, through the help of Goodwill, Easter Seals, the hiring of a career evangelist. And what we found was through that career evangelist, getting acquainted with our print service providers, and then with Avivo's help, getting all the counselors that were related to both Goodwill and Avivo, doing tours from those counselors, getting them out into our printing plants. They were floored. It was really fun to watch their reaction once they were on the shop floor going, I never knew this kind of work existed. They didn't know anything about a print operation. So that was really exciting. And then they brought that enthusiasm back to their outreach activities, and we began to see people enroll into our programs. And it was really fun to see that building. We had, through another partnership with Seek, temporary staffing, they were beginning to drum people who are looking for temporary help also into this training program. And so that was great, and I expected to come back again, but obviously that program was floored a bit by the pandemic. It did definitely slow us down, but it's not a sprint. It's a long track field, so I'm sure it'll come back soon.
And Jim, you'd mentioned funding from the city of Minneapolis. So, a lot of folks didn't even maybe think about tapping a local resource like a city who might have workforce development funds, or a local regional entity or a state entity. How do you do that? How do you go about it? Do you have to use a partner to do that? What thoughts on accessing those types of resources?
Sure. So as a nonprofit, we have 4 divisions. We have chemical health, mental health, career education training, and also employment services. So I oversee our career education, and I work closely with both our government and our private philanthropy grant writers. And so it's a continuous process of staying on top of where these opportunities are. We are our headquarters is in South Minneapolis. We've been there for several decades. And so we're very familiar with whether it's the city of Minneapolis or Hennepin County or DEED, state agencies, and kind of what funding mechanisms are out there. And this one was particularly attractive for this project just because of its purpose and its goal. The word pathway, trying to develop a career pathway, is something that I know a lot of us in workforce development are very passionate about, that it's not just about a job or even that first job, it's about a career and how do you navigate that. And so we just went through the typical process with the city, and building the program, we offer a 60-hour training that's your basic Microsoft Office, so Word, Excel, and then some employer expectations, some communication skills, those kinds of things. And what we did was, after the tours that Steve was talking about, after getting familiar with print, we took some elements, some basic elements, and infused that into the curriculum. So our basic class was the infrastructure, the curriculum was pretty much there, but we gave it the flavor of sort of overview of print. The average participant coming in, if they hear print, they might think, your local place that has copy machines, and they just don't understand all the things involved. And our staff, as Steve mentioned too, I mean, we had staff go on these tours and just blown away by, the equipment, the expertise, the artistry and the craftsmanship that is involved with so many print jobs. So it was really about us getting familiar so we could translate that and transfer that enthusiasm to potential participants, and then having just a basic understanding of the funding mechanism that's available in this case through the city of Minneapolis.
That's great. So that's a great example of tapping a local resource, building partnerships amongst multiple entities, and wish you all the best and really getting this off the ground, especially post-COVID, and looking forward to revisiting this in 2-3 years and showing a huge shining example of how to do it. So next, kind of like to turn it over to Tim, or just introduce Tim here. And Tim, like, exposure. What I heard in this last conversation was exposure. And I know we've talked about this. Why don't you just kind of give us an overview of your role at MDE and really how key it is to partner with the state entity and what you do, and really exposing more people to the opportunities in the print industry.
Well, Dave, part of what we do is obviously we help to kind of funnel the funding that comes from the state and from federal government to help support K-12 education particularly. So any kind of funding that's used, and you mentioned the Debs Perkins Consortium leader. Perkins funding is a federal funding stream that comes to the state to help support career and technical education, as well as we have a state levy, so there's funding that is available to the different districts that have career and technical ed programs to access that funding. And so what we do is, obviously our first job is as a compliance to make sure that the money's being used properly, that it's going to the right entities. But ultimately, I think a lot of how we see our position is to help kind of make those connections for educational partners to both industry and to the nonprofits like Jim is working with. So we, a lot of times schools exist kind of in their own, on an own island. They're very focused on the work that they have to do. It's important work, and so it takes up a lot of their time. So part of our job is to help kind of open those doors for them, to help them understand that there are other people that can help support them in exposing children and students to the different career options. Both Jim and Steve talked about the fact that a lot of folks are not aware of the kind of careers that are out there. So a lot of what we talk about is saying, that exploration has to happen sooner, that awareness has to happen sooner. I mean, kids don't know that they might be interested in a job in printing if they don't know what the printing industry is about. I mean, what are the opportunities that are available for them there? So we're looking for ways to do that. Some of that happens through this funding, but also it happens through kind of support that we have from industry. And so they become a crucial part of helping teachers to do that. Teachers know how to teach. They don't always know about the careers. Oftentimes we'll be lucky to have teachers that have come out of industry, but realistically, the teachers I work with cover a lot of ground. And so it's difficult for them to know all the options that are out there. And definitely things change so quickly. I mean, an industry like this has changed drastically in the last 50 years. So to understand that, to understand how it's developed, to get past the misconceptions that people have, that parents have, is kind of the work that we try and help teachers to do with help from industry and from nonprofit partners.
Right. And what kind of resources? Like, I'm an employer. I hear someone in your role, like I know who I need to get to are those students, but I then immediately think of the faculty. But what role, Tim, do you see like MDE being able to play to kind of maybe streamline that, bring in more people under that tent than just that one-to-one, get away from that one-to-one?
The basic things that we strive for, part of what we do is we have a program approval process where we're asking career and technical ed programs that are approved by the state to have advisory boards. So definitely they have to have an advisory from industry and from other sources that are helping them to guide the program. So it's incumbent upon the schools and the districts to find people in their communities that can serve on those. Obviously, a lot of times we want to help them with that. So we've created resources to try and help them understand what are the best ways to find those people? What are the best ways to bring them on? Who would be the best people to be involved with that? You know, what are the roles that you're asking them to play in doing something like that?
Right.
Beyond that, I've been working a lot, and my colleagues, we share a lot of information that we've created or provided to really try and help people understand how we start to build those relationships. I think a lot of times people want to go from 0 to 100, and what we're really trying to say is slow down, think about what are some basic things that you can start to get those relationships going. If you're an industry partner and you want to help out a school, you know, you need to understand what their needs are. You need to start to trust each other and understand what their needs are, what things are you trying to express. So thinking about all the different ways that you can provide activities. I noticed you have a slide up here
Yeah,
that
it's a
has
great
kind of,
resource that just kind of does a great snip. So if you just want to maybe go through this, because really audience is important, right? When we
right.
say general students, well, if I were talking to you, you'd quickly ask, well, what age of a student are we talking about?
Right,
And
right.
so understanding audience, so if you want to go through this, it's your slide. I'll let you chat about it.
Okay, certainly. Well, I think it's important too, because I think a lot of folks say, well, I've got to get them to early. And what do we mean by that? Well, you know, for some folks, that's going to be, we want to grab students as they're joining those post-secondary programs. But obviously, you know, we have to feed that process somehow. I mean, even getting kids to be to the Goodwill program that Steve and Jim mentioned, you know, they might need to have some idea that that's kind of the direction they might want to go. And so we might have to have the exposure in high school. But a lot of the research is telling us that, you know, kids aren't necessarily deciding on careers in middle school, but they're often deciding what they don't want to do. And so I think there's an opportunity there for industry to kind of help kind of, kind of demystify what the process is, to kind of have them understand, have their parents understand as another audience that we have to reach, that there is a career option here, that it isn't just a job, as you mentioned. It is really what's the whole spectrum of opportunities that are available. You know, we've gone through a lot of, in the last 20 years of people saying, my kid's going to go to college. Well, they can still go to college, but the career and technical ed pathway still might be a way for them to go. And obviously, as companies value these employees, they might go, you know what, we want to help you with that training and that additional skills so they can help to make that happen. But again, we need to find ways to start making parents and students understand what are the opportunities. And obviously Steve's going to talk about the piece that they've developed. That's great. We've done some basic resources that are available out there. I think on the next slide that you have, we kind of try and lay out a little bit of, you know, what are the possibilities? Where can you start? I mean, is it just guest speaking and then going to an apprenticeship program? There might be some steps in between. There might be some other touch points that you want to have, because one activity might not be the way to bring all your workers in. You might need to have multiple touch points, because students are going to need that encouragement along that whole career connected pathway that we were talking about, right? From, you know, elementary all the way through.
Right. Well, you know, I'm going to pose this question to you and pose it to everybody just to reinforce the same message. Like, people hear resources, there's an employer, they usually think, well, like, I'm going to just fund this. What is like the primary driver resource that a company, and I think Jim alluded to this a little bit, but what is that resource that they could provide?
Well, without a doubt, you're right. I mean, funding is something that we're all looking for, right? I mean, these are expensive programs, but I think a more valuable resource is the people that you have, the expertise that they have, the way that they can talk about the careers that they're in. because again, they can help to start connect for students. What are my opportunities? Why would I want to do a job like that? What's the value that I will get out of going into the print industry? And so they're probably the most useful thing. And so all these activities that are on the slide right now are really ones where we're trying to say, engage your employees, have them as many as you can in as many different ways as you can. You know, some of these are more involved, some are more short-term and quick touch kind of things. But again, they are excellent ways for employees to kind of also feel good about the work they're doing and that they're kind of bringing the next generation along. And so they can help start making that connection for everybody.
Right. And that resource is, like, back to that previous slide, that resource could be applied at any phase and any one of these phases as well that you laid out here.
Right. And it becomes more complicated as we go along, right? I mean, when the kids are young, we just want them to be aware of what their opportunities are. As they grow, we might want to have some explorations, job shadows, or a career fair, some way that they can start to understand better about what are the opportunities. And it's not just for folks who do operations work at your company. It could be people from HR. It could be people from sales and marketing. I mean, even people in those roles need to understand the industry. And so a student might say, well, gee, I don't know if I want to go into operations, but I like printing. I like what's going on here. Maybe there's another role for me. Maybe I could be in sales and marketing because I like the industry, but I might have another way to contribute.
Right, right. No, that's great. And Tim, everyone, like Tim put together some great slides. They're great information. It's probably hard to read off of this, but I believe Chris will make this PowerPoint available to everybody afterwards so you can dissect it.
I'll send her some PDF versions of these as well, so they're a little easier to read. And this last one is just to show you that, you know, kind of an idea of how you could lay something like that out. You know, where might you start? What are some ways to start kind of getting to know and start that relationship that we've all been talking about, and then moving on to increased engagement, and finally kind of creating those long-lasting, established relationships that are really going to be what that long-term investment will pay off, where you'll have, you know, a constant stream of students coming into the field.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this information is great, Tim, and really appreciate the information and getting it out there and showing these folks. It really does provide a roadmap of how they can engage, where they can engage. So, great resource.
Thank you.
Jessa, if anything, love to learn more about Skillsusa. Who are you partnering with? What does the work look like on your level, as well as what's going on in schools?
Sure, of course. Yeah. And Dave, if you want to put up the next slide, that might help our visual learners as I kind of talk through the program. So Skillsusa is a nonprofit national education association. We serve students in middle school, high school, and at the college post-secondary level, mainly in our technical colleges and community colleges across the state of Minnesota, especially, and across the nation. We are a career and technical student organization. And if you're not familiar with what that means, you're probably familiar with an example of a CTSO. So since I'm speaking to a lot of HR professionals, it's possible that some of you folks participated in an organization like DECA or BPA or something along those lines, or you're familiar with FFA. So Skillsusa is very similar in the nature of our programming. The biggest difference is who we serve. So Skillsusa serves the largest kind of umbrella of students entering different career fields. So we're going to serve the students who are entering kind of the true trades, right? So manufacturing, construction, transportation, and then all of those technical and skilled service occupations, from hospitality and tourism and culinary arts to healthcare to STEM to graphic arts and communications technologies and IT. I mean, like I said, it's just truly the largest umbrella of students that we serve. And one of the things that we do as an organization is we're considered intra-curricular. So when you think of your typical club, like an after-school club or activity, students end their school day and then they go out and participate in something else. A CTSO is meant to be embedded in the school day. And so Skillsusa is providing students with opportunities to learn more about the skilled trades, opportunities to learn more about leadership, providing them with educational and competitive opportunities, And it's built around what we call the framework, which again is supposed to be embedded within the school day. And that's allowing students to truly become workforce ready or career ready. So it's going to be built around personal, workplace, and technical skills. Just kind of a broad overview. From a national perspective, we had nearly 400,000 students and advisors participating last year, and that's fairly typical. And we served a little over 1,300 students at the state level last year as well. So we are in every state. I know that I may be speaking to folks who aren't just in Minnesota. One thing I would recommend is connect with your state SkillsUSA director, because they can help you learn how to get involved specifically in your state. Let's see,
I love the intra, like that distinction of being intracurricular versus extracurricular. Like that you're embedded in the school day. So like, as far as like a student experience, walk me through what a day or a week or a month might look like for that student, so that if I'm an HR professional and I understand I need to reach out to my state director, what kind of help manage my expectations of what could I see from that connection with the student?
Sure. Well, on a typical day or week or month, the student is participating in their school programming, right? So again, it kind of depends on their grade level. Obviously, middle and high school is going to look a lot different than a college program, especially a technical college program. So the students are learning their skill, especially at the technical college level, or they're exploring different skill areas within CTE programs at the middle and high school level. But then they're participating in what we call chapter activities. So if you're thinking of an extracurricular, they would call it a club. In an intracurricular, we call them chapters. And so in a chapter, students would have an advisor. So an advisor is an instructor or a staff member at the school. And they would get students together to participate in different activities, learn more about, again, our framework, to participate in what we call the program of work, which just helps kind of give a common language to students to understand when they're talking to someone about all their experiential learning, you know, what vocabulary to use with an employer down the line and things like that. And then the culminating activities are usually large leadership conferences, right? So for example, in the fall, we would do a large leadership conference where students would come together and they would learn how to be, you know, they would learn about SkillsUSA, they would learn how to be leaders in their school and in their community. And then in the spring, we would be ramping up for our large state competitions. And that's where those competitive opportunities come into play, like I just briefly mentioned before, where students actually come together and they they compete in their skill or technical area, as well as in different leadership and occupational areas. And those are places where our industry partners really, really come into play, because they are developing all of those contests, they're judging those contests, they're the volunteers, they're the backbone for that. And it gives our students an opportunity to be face-to-face with potential employers, but also to have their skills and their leadership judged by folks who are out in the workforce every day, as opposed to, I don't want to say just their teacher, but it's a different experience when it's your educator versus, you know, an industry professional, I think, in the students' minds.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's great. And when we chatted, you talked about like the outcome, you know, what is the outcome of every high school student? And if you want to elaborate on that, and then why that outcome is so important in today's marketplace.
Sure. I think, you know, in my bio that you shared with everyone, I talk about the fact that I'm passionate about career exploration and helping students leave high school with a direction. And so even though our organization serves students at the secondary level and the college or post-secondary level, the goal for me as a director is always to give students at the middle and high school grades those opportunities to explore careers so that they leave high school with a path, with a direction. Jim talked about career pathways, right? So it's not just about I know what job I want to have someday, but it's I know the path to get there. I know the steps, not just the educational and training steps, but I know contacts, right? I know who to talk to. I know what language to speak, what vocabulary to use. And so that's important for me, because I'll just share a brief bit about my background. Coming from the world of college admissions and working in the community and technical college side, 60% of students that would walk through the door were folks who had tried college at some point or who had taken a break. And a lot of students actually had participated in 2 or more college experiences before coming to the school I was representing. And those were folks who had essentially lost a decade. They'd lost about 10 years of time. They were already in college debt. And a lot of them had tried a 4-year school and realized they just weren't ready for that. They didn't know what career they were interested in. Therefore, they didn't know the educational pathway to get there. And so then they were finally kind of getting a better grasp of what they were interested in, what their skills and their talents and their passions were, and therefore what career to end up in. And I think some of that came from, Tim mentioned students in middle school aren't choosing what career they want, but they're definitely forming opinions about what they don't want. But if they're never exposed to certain career areas, I'm going to use the print industry as my example. I consider that a hidden industry. Dave, I used that term with you on one of our first chats, but I think that allowing young people, especially middle and high schoolers, to see what I call hidden industries, jobs they may never have thought of, even though they see it every single day. Print is everywhere, right? That's your campaign. Print is literally everywhere, but they don't see the jobs associated with print. Right. Manufacturing ties right in with print, but that's not the automatic thought process, right? And so I think, for me, I know I'm getting kind of long-winded on this answer, but for me, it's really, good. Career exploration at young ages and making sure that we don't find young people and young adults losing time. There's a reason why a lot of our SkillsUSA participants are in their 20s and 30s and 40s and even 50s. It's because they finally, at whatever point in life, found the career they were passionate about and they were good at. And so it allows us to kind of bring some pride back to some of these areas that maybe students have overlooked.
No, and it's huge. That whole message reinforces the work that Tim's doing, the outline of awareness and engagement, and that whole process throughout education, so that your goal can be achieved, and we can move those numbers down that you're seeing in the college admissions process. So that 60%, that lost decade is time and money for those individuals. So it's really a great opportunity, I think, for the print industry to get full line sinker involved, start helping people explore and getting plugged in. And the campaign that Steve's doing with Print is Everywhere is really a tool to start that conversation. It's great, but it's really a great tool. So we'll get into that a little bit, but just to thank you. Your work is awesome.
Thank you.
Paramount to helping these kids in schools. And Debbie's work is equally important. And Debbie, you wear a lot of hats. So which one would you like to start with? And obviously you've got the 30,000-foot view of this whole system from career technology education in the Twin Cities. Help people understand this a little bit better from your perspective.
Thank you. What I'm going to follow what everybody has said here in developing partnerships and relationships. I believe for the number of years that I've been in this, we have seen a dramatic difference in the last 3 to 5 years with how we're interacting with each other, whether it's our educational systems at the secondary level to post-secondary, from post-secondary to business and industry. But we're much more aware and conscious of the fact that we need to be in communication all the time. And that's where developing relationships for partnerships begins. It begins with trust. It begins with what do we value? Why do we value it? Oftentimes, I like to take a situation with a new business partner in our school district, for example, and say, what would you like out of this partnership? And then I ask the school the same thing. They bring together their lists, and oftentimes they can find a lot of mutual areas that they both will benefit from and be in partnership about. And that helps sustain a relationship a lot longer than somebody says, oh, I've got this to offer, and no teacher took me up on that. But if we develop that those talking points about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then let's find the commonalities between those. It will only benefit all of our students and our workforce going forward. So in that way, it does start a middle school in the state of Minnesota. All of our school districts are required to have some type of career development program embedded in what they do and how they do it. Jessa is obviously representing some associations where students have those opportunities at a very early age. Tim does with the Department of Education, and full disclosure, the three of us work together all the time through a variety of means. But I think the biggest change is our development of relationships with business and industry. I've been doing this for Bloomington schools for 20 years. And 20 years ago, people would say, well, nobody's going to take the time in business and industry. What are they going to get out of it? And it was a more short-sighted view that I think has changed dramatically. If we look at reaching students at any age right now in their career development choices, I always remind people that we're also reaching people in their family system, whether it be mother, father, grandparent, aunt, uncle, someone else, or an older brother and sister that maybe started school in one direction and changed directions and don't quite know what to do anymore. I think we've gotten much better at ways for people to exit choices and then re-enter choices in a more deliberate fashion than we have in the past. But we're also reaching their families and the other potential employees, not just with a student, but with their entire family. Because of our situation now with COVID, there are some really immediate needs that I think all of us could be addressing. Jim and Steve talked about taking tours and how amazed counselors were by what they saw and how they saw it. I would love to take a tour every day of businesses and industries in Minnesota, just to help spread that message to the teachers that are from bell to bell, bound to their school day, and can't even return phone calls to anybody during that time because they only have 4 minutes of passing time in between each class, that type of thing. So I help them understand that there are people out there that want to help and support them in their classrooms. An immediate need right now is, we've brought it up, if you say that you're taking a tour of a business or industry, could you carry a camera along and make an 8 to 10 minute video of that business or industry and talk about some of the potential of working in that business and industry, so that teachers that are now switching from, through their entire careers, they've had students sitting in front of them, to possibly, if they're lucky, a hybrid model where they're seeing students a couple days out of the week. And as we well know, there are a lot of schools that are doing distance learning. Well, imagine, if you will, all of those program areas in career and technical education that no longer have a lab space to be able to work in. They can't just keep pouring, their voice at these students and keep them engaged, but give them an 8 or 10 minute video and they can become engaged in the action of what's happening in a world outside of, right now, their dining room table or their bedroom, because that's where they're getting their education. So that's an immediate need that I think business and industry could help us fill. I think there are a lot of people out there that would be excellent at explaining what their job is exactly. And again, 8 minutes, 6 minutes. What do I do? How did I get here? Sometimes the more bizarre this pathway is, the better it is for students because they realize nothing is a straight path. But we could use that type of help and support with our day-to-day learning, especially if we're doing distance learning, to get students outside of a screen of just looking at a teacher or a post-secondary instructor. So you could take us on those tours. You could walk us through career paths right now. And honestly, I think it's one of our, instead of distance learning being a challenge, I think this is one of our opportunities for growth and development, to be reaching our students, their families, to engage them in a lot of different types of businesses and industries, careers, or jobs that are available. We have to look beyond whenever we get back together again. We do not want to lose that pipeline, nor do we want to lose student interest at this point, because we're limited to a screen in front of students. I think all of you can be highly successful at finding people that can provide that type of opportunity for us. Our chambers of commerce are working really diligently. Bloomington is part of the Greater Minneapolis Chamber of Commerce. We're an affiliate chamber, as is Twin West Chamber of Commerce now is under that umbrella, and Northeast Chamber of Commerce. They are working with our students, trying to find internship, mentorship opportunities, and how can they connect with students in that way. We have those programs set up. We're looking for a different means of communicating our information right now.
Right. And Debbie, I think hitting on all those points, like you just kind of stress your importance in the local market and workforce development. Like it seems like you've got a grasp of all the local players, all the local needs, and like how if I were an HR employer, like your type of role is across states and regions across the Midwest, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
It really is. And what we do we've mentioned the Carl Perkins federal legislation, which was developed for career and technical education program areas on a national level. Minnesota writes a state plan. One of the things Minnesota did more than 20 years ago was require that the secondary institutions worked collaboratively with post-secondary institutions. And for 15 years, 10 years for sure, I'd go to conferences and they say, how do you get them to talk to each other? And now it's a standard model as part of our Carl Perkins federal legislation that they are required to talk to each other. But as Tim pointed out, all of our programs in Minnesota also are required to have advisory committees. And that doesn't mean we want to invite business and industry to sit around for an hour and, look at each other and say, what do you need? What do you want? And then walk away and nothing gets done. I think right now, because we can use the advantage of Zooms or different meeting formats, that we have more opportunity to be sharing information with each other and do it in a productive manner that serves secondary, post-secondary. Our associations like Skillsusa, they could use those same pieces of video and those same tools. Tim, because we have this collaboration through this federal grant, Tim puts out messaging to teachers, in particular to career and technical fields in IT, marketing, business, manufacturing, automotive. He sends that information out, and because he is known in an education community, people read what he's pushing out saying, did you know of this resource? Make sure you click on here, and they are providing a free resource for you in this time of COVID to assist you and support you as educators. At the same time, it's going to serve a great purpose for workforce going forward, so we don't lose the thoughts of pipelines and developing talent.
That's great. No, so Perkins, it's federal legislation, so there's someone in a similar seat in across PIM's states that they're operating in.
They're all over the nation. Every state has a Carl D. Perkins federal grant allocation, and then each state is required to write a state plan particular to the business and industry and educational institutions in their state.
Right.
So we're all held to the state plan and on a broader level to the national plan.
Great. No, it's great work. Debbie, thank you for all the work that you do and the years that you've been doing it. I know we've run in on occasion, and I've always enjoyed our conversation. So really appreciate your work. Kind of just want to open it up to the group, but then maybe also ask Jim, hidden pools of talent. A lot of the focus has been on the education pipeline, whether it be middle school, high school, college, post-secondary. So thoughts, I'll put it to Jessa, Tim, and Debbie, thoughts on additional hidden pools of talent right now, especially with COVID. Like, you see the numbers of unemployed out there, there's got to be cross-sectional purposing of, these people are laid off in this industry. There's strong alliance with the print industry. Thoughts on how to make those connections or identify those opportunities?
Yeah, well, I can give a little bit on that, Dave. So, one question that I, throughout my career, have asked is who's not in the room? Who's not working at your plant? And so a lot of my focus, because of my connection with corrections, has been what we call second chance hiring. And so it's one of the primary barriers that thousands of folks face because they have a felony record. And a lot of businesses have processes in place that automatically screen people out. So sometimes a hiring manager doesn't even see a qualified candidate. And you might have someone with a background that background was driven by chemical dependency. And someone who's in recovery for a number of years turns out to be an ideal candidate. So that's just one example. And tapping into there are different ways to do that, connecting with certain staff members at the DOC who I used to work with. I'd be happy to connect people with that. But oftentimes people don't want to go there primarily out of fear. But there are programs, there are tax incentives, bonding, there are things to mitigate risk. So that's one thing. And as Steve and Chris both know, it's something I'm very passionate about, and I could take up the rest of the time talking about, but I won't.
So
yeah.
You mentioned out of fear. Have you seen some good examples of employers overcoming that fear, and how have they overcome it?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't want to mislead people. There are extreme examples. For example, Greyston Bakery out east that makes the brownies for Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Well, they're a B Corp. They're a social benefit corp, and they don't drug test, they don't background check, they don't interview. So that's not really a good fit for most employers. But there are some employers who have not necessarily done away with the background check, but it's not an immediate no. It's a piece of information that you use as part of a larger process that is more human-centered and that actually takes a more sophisticated view of a candidate. So I would just encourage people, when's the last time you sat down and looked at your hiring process and who's not getting through that initial process and why? And sometimes it might be a language barrier. We have a lot of folks, fairly new to the country who maybe where they came from were very talented in some manufacturing or something else, and they would be a good fit. Right now, for example, I oversee our dislocated worker program. So people who've been laid off, they come to us to receive services through these deed contracts that we have. And just a quick story, quick example, we have a Somali American who was an Uber driver apply for CDL training, and we can pay for that. And over the last 3 weeks, we're at almost 20 because of the personal network, because of word of mouth. And so that's another thing that I would ask folks is who maybe is currently working, who you might tap into their personal network. I think of a friend of mine who worked at Deluxe. His dad worked at Deluxe, and it was just sort of the thing to do. And so can you get folks from different communities that you might not have been thinking about to do a similar thing, and who's in their network, and word can travel. But you have to kind of think of things a little bit differently as far as these pools of talent that you might not otherwise have been considering.
Yeah. I feel like candidates like that Uber driver is just an amazingly well-tapped resource into their community. In addition,
Totally.
works hard, but if I'm an HR person, how do you identify those people? How do you find them out? Because obviously he's going to drive so much, or she will drive so much attention towards the organization industry.
Yeah, it's a great question, Dave. I mean, my personal biased answer is connect with a nonprofit like Avivo or Goodwill or Hired or Emerge or any of the Teamsters, any of us who are dealing with dislocated worker programs, because we have employment counselors who are working directly with folks who, I mean, we all have a network of some kind. And so tapping into that sometimes can be super, super valuable. One more quick thing, because it just came up in a couple different meetings I've been in, I just wanted to touch on. I think we're all understanding that COVID has had a significant impact on the hospitality industry. And so you're going to have a number of people who are just going to have to retrain. They're going to have to do something different because so many restaurants are closed and they're never coming back. And so targeting, laser beam with this population, many of whom are, they're not 18, 19 years old. They're 29, 39, 49, what have you. And they were moving along just fine, doing okay in their hospitality career, and that's gone. Right. And so Hospitality Minnesota is somewhat like PIM. It's the professional association in Minnesota of hospitality, hotels, restaurants, etc. So just something to think about is who's getting laid off en masse and who might be interested in doing something different.
But I think you hit on the head, like a structural economy change that forever will be changed, and these folks need to identify new opportunities. So they're out there.
Dave, I just wanted to maybe chime in a little bit, because if you were on the session earlier this morning, we talked about our diversity coalition that we've started. And one of the things that we're sharing with our members is that, like Jim said, all these community-based organizations are already integrated into a variety of networks that you may not have access to right now. But it really starts with senior management commitment, that if you want to create diversity, then you have to do something different. You cannot continue the same hiring practices and to go through the same networks and uploading to Indeed or Monster and continue the same channels. Or if you are just asking your own current employees for their own networks, you have to be committed to doing something different. And we as an association have taken on that we need to put these diverse organizations in front of our members. And so exactly what Jim said, it's up to us to make sure that the list of all the CBOs that are available to them, we're going to make them available to our members and say, look, first you got to have a commitment to changing your hiring practices. Then here are the resources for you to start expanding your network.
That's great.
I'd like to add,
go ahead, Chris.
Another network. Don't forget that your school districts educate throughout somebody's lifetime. We have community education programs that are specifically designed for adults in the community, whether they're trying to earn a GED, learn English in a different way, more applicable to what their employment is. And so don't forget that through our community education programs in every school district across the state, and it's true in other states too, that you have adult learners walking through your doors in those places. And we're happy to get you connected to the people teaching those classes and also working on workforce skills.
Yeah, no, great.
I would add to that, probably just to plug some other government agencies. Deed works a lot in this field too. And so, we talk about youth at risk programs. I was just hearing about this yesterday. Obviously the workforce centers, there are other options to consider how to start making that connection. I mean, they're a conduit for some of the same things that Deb's talking about.
Right. And one of you mentioned early on in the first part is casting a wide net. And I think it was either Jim or Tim, you talked about casting that wide net of partnerships. So it's not just education, but all these other CDOs.
And I would add kind of something that we were talking about earlier, the facts that Steve mentioned. I think beyond hiring practice, I think just even thinking about the way that you want to talk about your business with students is going to be helpful to think about. I mean, what image are you projecting to those students? Who's welcome in your business and who isn't? And that can be very subtle. And I know that's not, it's not my specialty either, but I think it's just thinking about how can I have this student look at our business and say, that's a place where someone like me is welcome. And that can take a lot of forms. I'm not, it's not one thing or another, but it's just to think about in terms of that recruitment strategy when you're talking about making careers aware and things like that. It's the same kind of thing I would kind of keep in your mind.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Dave, if I can just real quick add, the COVID challenge does present an opportunity because, and as Steve mentioned, at the beginning, I know some of the PIM members are hiring. Some folks, have openings, and to put those in front of an employment counselor who's working with someone who's just been laid off, who's maybe been doing the same job for 17 years and never thought that they would do something different. I can't tell you how many people we serve. It's in the hundreds who now it's virtual, but connect with their employment counselor, and some of the first things they say are, I have no idea what I want to do. Right? So it's like the clay ready to be molded. And so if there are opportunities that people can be presented with, hey, here's this career path in printing, let's take a look. And maybe your skills, maybe your aptitude, maybe it's a good fit. It's not going to fit for everybody, obviously. But if those opportunities aren't even in front of an employment counselor who's directly helping people get work who've been laid off, it's a missed opportunity.
Well, that's a good point. Justin, not to call you out, but anything you'd like to add?
No, honestly, I would just echo everything that everyone else has said, especially, the hospitality industry, because I believe Jim made the point, but those are jobs that are not coming back in a lot of places. And these are folks who maybe that's all they've ever done. Right.
And, kind of moving on to the next slide, I think, talking about a hidden industry, out of the print is everywhere campaign literature that Steve's put together, and I let him talk about it here a little bit, but this slide really jumped out at me, especially since we're talking about hospitality. But there are more print-related businesses in the U.S. than McDonald's and Subway restaurants combined, and print employs nearly 400,000 Americans, so contributing to a near 1 trillion global print market. So, very sizable. And it's a very sizable market when we're talking about a hidden market. So getting this information out to folks. And Steve, why don't you talk about a little bit your goal and mission with the Print is Everywhere campaign and what you hope your members do, and kind of inconsistent with the message that we're hearing here today of how to partnership.
Yeah, and if I could, I'm not going to share the whole presentation, but based on what Tim just said, I wanted to just share my screen for a second, if you don't mind, just for 2 minutes. So I'm gonna just stop your screen sharing if you don't mind.
Yeah, share yours, yeah.
All right. So basically what the Print is Everywhere campaign is really trying to tell the story of that, because in the past, our industry has presented itself in silos. So there's commercial sheet fed, they have their own trade shows, there's wide format and specialty graphics, then there's packaging. But that's just not the nature of our industry anymore. So if you take a look at this slide, this is just an everyday coffee shop. And actually this is the first slide, but it's all of these items that are part of this coffee shop, whether it's the graphics on the truck, whether the t-shirts, the printed on the coffee cups, graphics over here, the direct mail, the t-shirts. I mean, all of this is print. And this is who our printers are today. But to go with exactly what Tim said is what we're just doing is we're trying to convey the vibrancy of our industries under one umbrella and using imagery that connects with students today. So this is really designed by Gen Z, for Gen Z, and it brings these 6 industries of print together under one umbrella and talks about each one individually about the new innovations, new technologies, and new growth that are going on right now. It's certainly before the pandemic, you know, what had companies that were maybe kind of stale, they're absolutely declining. They weren't invigorating their service supply chain. They weren't understanding their customers' needs. No, that's really changed. And I think those companies that are left in the marketplace, which is still absolutely considerable, about 40,000 print-related enterprises, that they're growing and they're expanding their market because everyone continues to need to communicate. So, you know, if you look at what we did here on commercial sheet fed, so we're truly talking about the emotional connection that people have with print. You know, a birthday message doesn't hold a candle as, you know, as much as that you get in the mail if it's on your news feed. You know, in packaging, amazing innovations in packaging today. Amazing innovations connected with technology, utilizing augmented reality. You know, telling the story that, you know, this is the print industry. When you're driving down a street, if you're driving on 94 and you look at the 3M building, you see this massive graphic really telling the story of 3M in such a vibrant way. That is the print industry. And, you know, the same thing with, you know, walking down the street, sharing a message right on your shirt. You know, in the political age, in this environment, you know, that is massively important to people to be able to communicate their preferences, whether it's at a game or, you know, whether it's telling a story through labeling and, you know, a voting sticker or a label on a clothes. So we're really, you know, trying to tell the story that print is evolutionary. It is breaking through traditional boundaries. And that, you know, for us, it's really critical that we also tell the story that print is green, that there are more trees today than on the first Earth Day. We plant more trees every year than print takes out of the environment, and that we are an eco-friendly industry. And this is incredibly important to us, and that, you know, when people say don't print your emails, you know, that's really not the point. We actually do a tremendous amount for the environment and plant way more trees than you could ever possibly print. And there's a lot of jobs in a variety of ways that you might not know about. There's a lot of creative jobs, there's technical jobs, there's database driven, and there's, of course, there's hands-on production work, and there's a lot of management as well. So this is the story that we're telling, and basically what we're trying to do is to put this in the hands of our members so they can tell this story more effectively. Yeah. And that's really the point of it, is that this is not going to be PIM getting this message out, that this is the industry getting the message out in their communities. So when you do a tour, whether it's a printer or we do a tour to a CBO, that we're all kind of at least initially on the same songbook. We're sharing the benefits of the industry, and then drilling down into whatever your story is and how you're connected to that industry. Yeah. So we're trying to give people at least some of the benefits and tool to tell the exciting story of print. And so in addition to that, this is going to be housed on a website you can go to right now, which is printiseverywhere.com. And on that website, you're going to be seeing a lot more tools available to you beyond just Print is Everywhere. Because the point is, we need a pathway for moving people into the industry and to stay as a career. So the Print is Everywhere campaign is designed to get some excitement. But once you become excited and you see our opportunity in print, well, then on that website, we have a training that's coming, apprenticeship programs, a lot of experiential learning programs. And we've got career opportunities. So we talk a lot about careers in print, and we'll be connecting printers And so they can connect more with students on our Connect Locally pages. So all the 22 affiliates from Printing United from around North America are part of this program. And so if you're looking for a job in print in Kansas City, we've got you excited about that. We're going to connect you with a job board in Kansas City. If you're looking for a school, we can connect you with that too. So this is a long haul program. We're just getting it underway, but it's I think going to be an exciting opportunity to tell the story and then to have people kind of have a pathway into print.
Well, it seems like this is a good tool as well for, your HR and print employers to really use this as a tool to introduce themselves to folks in their own community. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. So thank you, Steve. Chris, I think you wanted to open up a little bit for Q&A. So it looks like we might have 5 minutes for questions for the panelists.
Yeah, I have not received any questions. If they want to type them in now or raise their hand, we would be happy to unmute them. We haven't lost that many participants, so they're still here.
I'll start with one. If they come in, we hope that they do. I wanted to ask Tim from kind of a macro level, since you get to see a lot of schools and high schools, and what needs do they have? I mentioned to you earlier, there's a print ed certification program. We're trying to educate and bring more graphic communication education as it relates to schools themselves. Where do you see schools needing that kind of connection with business right now? Are you seeing any programs that are really working well, connecting to industry that we might be replicating?
Not enough that I'd love to have more. I mean, I think that's the big question or the big answer that I would have, because really, there are a lot of isolated programs, and I think they would benefit greatly from being able to connect to the folks in your industry. I mean, this is going to be a great tool to kind of help make some of that connection. Yeah. I think a lot of them struggle to figure out how do we expand the program. What are the things that I need? And I think Deb mentioned earlier the whole idea of, in this particular point, teachers are struggling to figure out, well, what do we do? I mean, so much of the classwork they do is really hands-on. And so what are some other elements that I need? And one of them is career exploration. I mean, that's an element that we expect to see in any career and technical ed program. So we really, the expertise that their folks have, if they can, again, help to start making some connections about the work that kids are doing in classrooms to what they might be doing when they leave and go into an industry, that is probably gold for just about any teacher in any classroom.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
And Deb did bring up the video idea, which I love. And so is there guidance? Any thoughts on, like, okay, I just walked through my factory and I shoot a video like I would be doing a tour. Any guidance on that?
First thing, don't put up a organizational chart. No high school or middle school kid wants to look at an organizational chart. They don't care. I think Deb said it really well. I mean, it's talk about what you do. Even if you're comfortable, you can talk about what you make. That's less important than kind of, why did you choose to do that? How did you get there? I think like you said, that's really important for kids to understand that it's never a straight path.
Yeah.
Right.
And should that feature some interviews within the organization of the actual people on the ground?
The more voices, the better, right? Because students will connect in different ways. And so whatever ways work best, we definitely would love to see that. And talk about themselves. I think we can't always connect to the job, but we can connect to the person. So, I like to play sports, or I have this hobby. It's totally different from my work, but I love my work, but I also love this hobby. I mean, kids can start to see themselves in that, because I think a lot of times people in the industry don't seem real. It's kind of like, I think all of us had the experience. You ever saw your teacher at school, at the grocery store, you were kind of flabbergasted. I thought they lived at the school. I thought they were just powered down at the end of the day. And I think they'll think that about these people in this industry if we don't humanize them. And what humanizes them is kind of what you love and what you hate about your job. But I'm still here because the work is so great, or whatever it is. I mean, the best story I ever heard, a Girl Scout asked a woman who worked as a research scientist, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you love your job? And the student said, the researcher said, well, I'd say 8 because I love the research. That's a 10, but writing grants is a 2. And that was really nice to understand that there's pluses and minuses to every job. And so don't let the minuses throw you off from the great pluses that are in that job.
And can I add, these do not have to be highly professionally produced videos. In fact, if you make a mistake, if somebody trips over something, whatever, it engages the kids even that much more. So a little humor work goes a long way, and they just don't want to hear a talking head. So be real on the video and don't worry that it isn't a professional production that you're sending the way of any instructor.
For sure. And then I would also add, because it's extremely important, is to try to make it diverse as much as possible. So, you know, kids are always looking for representation of someone that looks like them. And when I've gone out and spoken to classrooms, a lot of our old videos did not have that representation. And that's the first thing that they notice is they'll say that there's no people of color. Where are the Black people? Where are the brown people? And so they're always very honest as to what they're seeing. And if they don't see it, they're not going to want to go to it.
Ages too. I mean, I hate to say that, but young people and old people, you want all of them, because I think young people sometimes will connect in a different way, but older folks can connect as well. And so I think that's another piece to look at, because sometimes if you have somebody who's young and excited, enthusiastic, that can be someone that they feel closer to. That always helps.
And always talk about money, because they really like to hear about it.
Give a range though. You don't have to give your exact salary. There's not the Social Security.
But
yeah, people can expect a range from this to this.
Yes.
That's always good.
But they'll always ask.
The kids will ask. You don't always have to tell them. They say, I make enough to be happy. And I don't do this job because of the money sometimes. I mean, people can say that, right?
They can also say stuff like, well, I was able to buy a house at 25. I have a car. I get to go on trips. Those sorts of things that kids like to hear.
Yeah. But I always feel like it's like, tell them you make enough money so you can have a house, but what gets you out of bed in the morning is X.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes me get up and come in, because this is what I love to do, or I love the people I work with. I mean, it could be different things that are going to appeal to different kids.
Yeah.
It's great. No, so I love the idea. It doesn't have to be a high production piece, because I think that's where most people go and just grab your phone, walk around the office.
Very good point, Debbie.
Yeah, it's great.
I don't see any other questions, and I think you guys talked about some really great steps that our HR people can take to start looking for those pipelines, even now, even in these times when we have all this other stuff going on. We know eventually we're going to need people to enter our workforce, and we actually need them now. So thank you, everyone on this panel, for providing your insight. I really enjoyed it. And so thanks to Dave, Jessa, Jim, Debbie, and Tim, and Steve as well for giving your insight. Do you guys have any last minute sort of things that you want to say?
I'd like to say thank you. I've enjoyed the conversation, and everyone on the panel here is just a joy to talk with. And so really sharing your insights. Thank you so much.
Yes. And we will make recordings and all the handouts available soon. Probably not today, but soon. And we'll have contact information for everyone if you want to reach out to them. And I think we'll let Steve shut it down.
All right, thank you, Chris, for helping bring this together and managing it today. It was really a terrific day. I think everyone pretty much stayed with us the whole day, which I thought was incredible. I know we've got a lot of people who are registered for the event also who are going to be watching offline. So that's the beauty of what we've got here, is it's going to be accessible live on than just the information today, because we learned some massive things today. I know that there are a lot of notes being taken. So thank you all for your expertise. and your continued passion for the industry, for students, and for learning. So thank you so much, and appreciate everybody's support today, and we'll see you next time.